In The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, not all runes are created equal. For instance, would you rather stop an eldritch beast in place for a few seconds, or be able to take a cute picture of a squirrel? So in this video, I decided to rank all the runes in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And starting us off in last place is, you guessed it, the camera rune. To say the least, the camera rune isn't great. I know it's mainly meant to be used for quests, but the camera rune has practically no combat use or exploration use. In the Wild, you can obtain the camera rune by talking to Purah in the Hateno Ancient Tech Lab. In Tears of the Kingdom, you can obtain the camera rune by completing quests for Purah at Lookout Landing. Now for the fun test. I would actually say that the camera rune isn't the worst on the fun side of things. I personally find it quite enjoyable to try to fill out the Hyrule Compendium. Overall, all of these factors combined result in the camera rune receiving last in the ranking. Cryonis has never been a very good rune, hence why it is in 13th place. Cryonis' main function is to create a pillar of ice on any body of water. Now, at first glance, this ability sounds pretty useful, but judging by how small the pillar is and the 3 at a time limit, you're better off using something like Revali's Gale. However, this ability is really useful in some shrines, which is the only thing preventing Cryonis from being in last place. Now, for the fun value, and to be honest with you, I really don't like using Cryonis. The limit of only being able to have 3 pillars out at a time is very frustrating, especially in Cryonis shrines. Another rune with very specific use cases would be the Remote Bomb. The Remote Bomb's main thing it's got going for it, technically, is an unlimited source of damage, because while swords and bows will break, Remote Bombs will never break, no matter the amount of times they are used. This advantage comes with 2 major drawbacks though. The first of which is the Remote Bomb's lack of damage. The Remote Bomb only does 12 damage, which is worse than common weapons like the Forked Lizzle Spear. The second major drawback is the long cooldown period between uses. The Remote Bomb can be obtained from the Jawbai's Shrine on the Great Plateau. The Remote Bombs are actually pretty fun to use though. I really enjoy blasting monsters back with this rune's powerful knockback. I also especially enjoy the Goron cannons that use remote bombs as a propulsion mechanism. Stasis is a very versatile rune, and to be clear, I am not talking about Stasis Plus. This segment is just about the default stasis. Stasis is typically used for 2 things, puzzles and travel. The puzzle aspect of stasis can be found in shrines and in divine beasts, and stasis can even be used for cheesing some shrines. The travel aspect of stasis happens when you stasis an object, whack it a bunch of times, and finally get on top of that object. Now, to obtain stasis, you need to head to the Oa Dame Shrine on the Great Plateau. I would say I find the stasis rune pretty fun. Recall is like stasis' younger brother. Instead of stopping time, Recall rewinds time. Recall can be obtained from the Temple of Time on the Great Sky Island. Recall isn't always the most useful rune, but I find it pretty fun to play around with. Remote Bomb Plus is a strict upgrade from the base Remote Bomb. Remote Bomb Plus has half the cooldown, double the damage, and a bigger blast radius. The only downside to this rune is that 24 damage is still not that much. I actually really like using this rune because of the Korok Leaf. Since remote bombs are so light, the Korok Leaf can push the remote bombs very far distances. Combined with the remote bomb's high blast radius, it can be devastating. The Amiibo rune is probably the most complex rune in the entire game. The way the Amiibo rune works is once per day you can scan any specific Legend of Zelda Amiibo for ingredients and gear. The Amiibo rune's fun value really depends on how many Amiibo you have and what RNG you get. The once per day cooldown is really what hinders this rune. Plus, the chances of getting something valuable are pretty slim, and the gear really isn't the best. Master Cycle 0 is arguably the most fun way to travel in all of Breath of the Wild, and pretty efficient too. Is what I would say if fast travel didn't exist. Yeah, this rune would really only be useful early game, but considering how you get this rune after beating the Champion's Ballad DLC, which requires all 4 Divine Beasts to be conquered, this rune really isn't that useful. The fun that comes with using this rune is really what earns the Master Cycle 0 this spot on the list. Magnesis is a pretty powerful but niche rune. Magnesis is mainly used for puzzles, but it also has a niche combat use too. Magnesis allows the ability to move metal objects at will, though this does come with the drawback of a shorter range than other runes. Magnesis can be obtained from the Omen Owl Shrine on the Great Plateau. Magnesis' combat use comes from the fact that swung metal objects can do damage. Just like remote bombs, Magnesis can also be an infinite source of damage as long as there is metal around. Now, for the fun value, I don't love the way Magnesis feels. The lack of range paired with a relatively low movement speed aren't my favorite. Overall, Magnesis is a pretty useful rune to have. Auto Build is a super cool rune. I love being able to bring back past Ultra Hand creations even if I don't have the required parts. However, Auto Build does have a pretty big flaw. If you don't have the required Zonite parts, it can cost a lot of Zonite. However, I really do enjoy using Auto Build. I find it really fun to zoom around on a hover bike or fly around on a plane. Overall, Auto Build is a pretty fun and useful rune to use. Ascend is a very useful rune whose main purpose lies in exploration. Ascend allows you to, ascend through surfaces, which turns out to be a pretty useful ability. The biggest drawback to this ability is that not all surfaces are ascendable. You can obtain Ascend at the Gutenbach Shrine on the Great Sky Island. For the fun value, I would say that Ascend is definitely a helpful rune, but can be very frustrating when you can't ascend through a surface. Overall, Ascend is a very useful rune for traveling around the world of Tears of the Kingdom. Ultra Hand is an amazing rune, essentially acting as an upgraded Magnesis. Ultra Hand has two main functions. The first is the ability to move objects at will. This isn't a super useful ability on its own, however, with Ultra Hand's second function, which is the ability to build, this rune can become very powerful. You can unlock Ultra Hand at the Akau Shrine on the Great Sky Island. Now for the fun value. I find building custom creations quite enjoyable and think it adds a whole new realm of possibilities to Tears of the Kingdom. Overall, I think Ultra Hand is an amazing ability that is so well designed and adds tons of depth to Tears of the Kingdom. Fortunately for Ultra Hand, combat is my favorite part of Tears of the Kingdom, and that's why Fuse is in the second place spot. Fuse allows weapons, arrows, and shields to gain more damage and different effects. At first glance, Fuse might seem like a pure damage-focused rune. However, some popular fuses like rocket shields and bomb shields are great for exploration too. You can obtain Fuse at the Inisa Shrine on the Great Sky Island. Now, for the fun value. I could see some people thinking Fuse is way too boring and simple, but I'm not that person. I love using Fuse and watching a weapon's attack power drastically increase as I add a monster horn to it. Overall, Fuse is a great rune, and I think it's really satisfying dealing so much damage. And now, the number one rune in all of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is Stasis Plus. Stasis Plus is an incredible rune capable of freezing monsters in place for multiple seconds. Stasis Plus is a must-have for boss battles and enemy encounters because of the free damage you can achieve while the enemy is frozen. Stasis Plus is also such a fun rune. I love freezing monsters in place before going in for some big damage. You can obtain Stasis Plus by trading in 3 ancient cores with the Hateno Ancient Tech Lab. Overall, Stasis Plus has so much going for it that it's hard to justify putting it anywhere but first place on this list. Well, there you have it. Every rune ranked in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.